A scathing attack on education reforms from a leading children's author. Michael Morpurgo, the man who wrote War Horse, says plans for grammar schools are divisive and unnecessary.
Sure, later on, you absolutely have to provide an education where children can find their feet and their fulfilment, but not at 11. That's when it really hurts.
Also this lunchtime, Boris Johnson meets his Russian counterpart as the US blames Russia for the destruction of an aid convoy in Syria. More protests in America after another black man is shot dead by police. And keep cats on a lead or indoors, the American academic who's angered cat lovers across the country.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Ranveer Singh.
Good afternoon. A former children's laureate, who is one of the country's best-known authors, has today issued a scathing assessment of Britain's education system. Michael Morpurgo has spoken exclusively to ITV News and criticises the Prime Minister's latest reforms, which would increase the number of grammar schools in England. With research suggesting as many as 1 in 3 children don't have a single book at home, he says the education reforms will further divide our society. Nazanin Mashiri reports.
Early one morning, Jim woke up and saw an enormous plant growing outside his window.
The wonder and the joy of being read to is clear in these young faces. But according to the Book Trust, this is the closest many children will ever get to a book. It is an unacceptable situation, according to Michael Morpurgo, president of the Book Trust.
The problem in this country, both with reading and with education, is that it has this huge divide between those that have and have not, do read and do not. And the two things are very, very closely associated. And we haven't bridged that gap.
Stand by your horses!
This is a personal battle for Michael Morpurgo, author of a successful play, War Horse, who failed his own 11+ exam many years ago.
All the people around you, the teachers, the other children, all know you failed. And the word fail hits you like a dagger in your heart when you're that age.
So selective education, grammar schools, for you, clearly not the way forward?
No, we've been there, done that, hasn't worked. You're doing a terrible thing to, if you like, the unity of this country. You're simply dividing people at the age of 11.
His comments come amid concerns that as many as 1 in 3 children don't own a book. 65% of parents are worried about family members spending too much time online. By the age of 11, only 38% of parents read to their children at bedtime. Critics also say children are tested too often and would like to see schools reinstate regular story times.
Loads of children will learn how to sound out and say a million words, but they don't know what they mean. And listening to beautiful picture books and chatting about the stories as a group and enjoying them, that's what makes them want to understand the words on the page when they're reading on their own. So it is crucial.
The Book Trust says that a love of reading is more about just gaining knowledge. It gives children a sense of respect and the empathy they need to become better adults. Nazanin Mashiri, ITV News.
Joining me now is Katie Ashford, the Deputy Head of a free school in North West London. Good morning to you. Good afternoon. Force of habit there. Listen, the point that the author there seems to be making is that grammar schools appeal to those families who are already interested in learning and value it. But with 1 in 3 kids who don't have a book at home, grammar schools are going to do absolutely nothing for that. And really, the government's attention should be on what to do with those 1 in 3.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think that grammar schools can be a bit of a red herring in some senses. For example, the comprehensive school that I work at, Michaela Community School in North London, we teach an extremely rigorous curriculum that most grammar schools and, in fact, independent schools would be proud of. For example, by the end of Key Stage 3, when pupils are 14, they've already read 5 Shakespeare plays and around 40 classic novels, which is something that really puts us in the same league as those exceptional schools nationally.
Would you consider turning your free school into a grammar school?
I don't think it's necessary, and I think that we really feel that we can get the best out of every child, regardless of their starting point or background.
And the point is that we know many parents, don't we? I'm sure people watching will know who can tutor their children to pass the 11 plus. But that sense of failure at age 11, I mean, what is the point of extending the grammar school system from your point of view if it doesn't actually help those who are at the bottom rung, if you like?
Well, I think in terms of the failure at 11, I think it's better to understand and know where children's weaknesses are at age 11 rather than at age 16, when they then leave the education system and go out into the world with no qualifications. At the moment in this country, nearly a fifth of children leave school illiterate and innumerate, and actually I think it's incumbent upon us as educators to look at where children are when they're 11. And so whilst...
shouldn't that come earlier then? I mean, the point that Michael Mpogo is making is that actually you need to be helping children at age 6 and 7, and the attention of the government is in the wrong place. Would you agree with him?
I do agree with that, and I think that the only way that we can actually is support those children and ensure that we fill in the gaps that they have in their knowledge, and particularly with reading, whether that be their ability to decode the words on the page or their comprehension of the language itself. We need to do lots of testing, and we need to assess those children constantly to make sure that we know exactly where their gaps are, to guide pupils and to guide teachers and parents so that they know exactly what they need to do to improve. And that's why at Michaela we do lots of testing, and that really enables our pupils to make great progress.
Katie, thanks for your point of view this afternoon. Thanks, Katie Ashford there. The blame game continued today over the attack on an aid convoy in Syria on Monday. The US believes 2 Russian jets carried out an airstrike, but that's been denied by Moscow. It has released drone footage which it claims shows the convoy travelling with a truck armoured with heavy mortar. The Foreign Office said the attack was unacceptable, and the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson is meeting his Russian counterpart. More now from our political correspondent, Libby Wiener.
Daylight and the ferocity of the attack on a convoy delivering aid to trapped civilians in Syria is all too apparent. It seems hardly credible such damage could have been caused by anything but an airstrike, although the Russians released this footage suggesting a mortar from a passing vehicle was to blame. The White House was clear who the US holds responsible.
All of our information indicates clearly that this was an airstrike. That means there only could have been 2 entities responsible, either the Syrian regime or the Russian government. In any event, we hold the Russian government responsible for airstrikes in this space.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Boris Johnson, who barely glanced at Russia's Sergei Lavrov as they met for their first face-to-face encounter, also condemned the convoy attack as unacceptable. But the British government's own policy is facing renewed scrutiny. MPs expressing concern in a report that before the current ceasefire, British pilots had carried out very few airstrikes because of problems identifying which rebel forces to back.
31 of them were in the first 2 months, and ever since then it's been single figures per month for these airstrikes. And the problem there is that we're not sure who we're supporting.
In the meantime, one thing becoming painfully clear, hopes of this ceasefire lasting have all but disappeared. Libby Wiener, ITV News.
A 41-year-old man's been shot and wounded following an attempted knife attack on the Israeli embassy in Ankara. Police shot him in the leg as he reportedly approached the embassy chanting slogans and carrying a knife. He's not thought to have any links to any terrorist organisation. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has confirmed staff at the embassy are safe. The man accused of planting bombs in New York and New Jersey has been charged with 4 offences, including using a weapon of mass destruction. 28-year-old Ahmed Khan Rahami is already facing charges of attempted murder after a shootout with police. American police used tear gas on hundreds of people who were protesting on the streets of Charlotte in North Carolina last night after the fatal shooting of a black man. Keith Lamont Scott was shot dead by an officer who claims he was armed. His family deny that and say he was carrying a book. His death follows the fatal shooting of another black man last week. Paul Davies has the latest.
Anger turning to violence on the highway aimed at the police. It has become one of the images of America's summer. This time, protesters blocked Interstate 85 at Charlotte following the shooting of a black man in disputed circumstances. The police deployed exploding tear gas grenades to clear the crowd. These protesters turned their anger on a police car, as once again the accusation was levelled that black lives count for less in the eyes of the authorities.
It's been growing. People getting shot everywhere, man. So if you're a black guy, you probably should be scared, because we're the ones getting shot.
The police insist Keith Lamont Scott was carrying a gun when officers approached him at this apartment block.
As they engage him, he is armed with a handgun that we found on scene as well.
Didn't have no gun. He wasn't messing with nobody.
But Scott's sister gave a very different account of the fatal confrontation.
They jumped out their truck. They said, hands up. He got a gun. He got a gun. Pow, 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 pow. That's it. He ain't had no gun.
The Charlotte killing comes as authorities in Oklahoma investigate the police shooting of Terence Crutcher 5 days ago. They admit Crutcher, whose car had broken down, was not armed when he was shot dead. So yet again, the deadly use of firearms against black people has brought confrontation between communities and those whose job it is to protect them, and raised allegations of racial bias in America's policing. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Last week, ITV News revealed that almost 3/4 of doctors admitted to rationing care as the NHS struggled financially. Since then, lots of viewers have been in touch to tell us how they too are missing out on vital treatment. In many of those cases, there were big gaps in access to mental health care. This on the day that a group of MPs claimed there isn't enough money to improve that. Let's speak to our health editor, Rachel Younger. Rachel, you reported on this funding drought last week, and now real proof that this problem is big.
Yeah, and I think what's toughest about this is that it's some of the most vulnerable people the NHS treats that are being hit hardest by this. I spoke to one mum from Swindon, Ramya Kumar, whose 9-year-old son, despite being a real maths whiz kid, as you can see there, is autistic, and he has a number of associated health problems with things like his speech and mobility. Now, Ramya told me that although her son's condition isn't improving, the pressure on paediatricians where they live means that the care he gets is being dramatically cut.
It started with us having an appointment with a community paediatrician every 3 months, then it went to every 6 months. Over the span of last 3 years, now it's gone to once a year, so annual review, and that's all we get to see the paediatrician.
And Rishi's experience was one that was echoed by many other viewers who got in touch.
The government must know how bad the situation is, Rachel.
Well, that's what the Public Accounts Committee, essentially the government spending watchdog, has been trying to find out by really scrutinising the NHS accounts. It's praised the government's ambition to try and put mental health care on a par with physical care, but it said it can't see how without more money that care is going to be available. And what they found chimed in very much with what we found in our investigation last week, as the chair of the committee told us.
Money is a real issue in the health service, and we're already seeing difficult decisions being made about rationing. So there's got to be a bigger national conversation about this, including around mental health treatment, and it's going to be very difficult to afford to deliver what every patient needs.
Now, the Department of Health says that the £1 billion a year extra it's putting into mental health up until 2020 should revolutionise things. But it's really important to say that money isn't ring-fenced, as the committee notes. And that means with the NHS needing to save £3 billion this financial year, you can see why the cracks are showing.
Health editor Rachel Younger, thanks so much. Still to come this lunchtime, Paralympic champion Johnny Peacock on becoming a model athlete.
And why there are calls for cats to be put on leads and strays to be killed.
But first, voting has ended in the Labour leadership contest. More than 500,000 people were registered to vote. The result will be announced on Saturday. The favourite to win is the current leader, Jeremy Corbyn. The man challenging him, Owen Smith, says the party needs to move on from infighting and form a credible opposition. Our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan, is live in Westminster for us. What would a victory mean for Jeremy Corbyn and the party?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn victory, and I don't know anyone who doesn't think that's what's about to happen, would probably leave the party still growing. His great achievement is to make them the biggest political party in Western Europe in terms of membership. The electorate for this is 640,000. That's astonishing compared to the other parties. But it is a huge party which many within it think has fairly distant electoral prospects. This is how Owen Smith put it this morning.
Are we happy to just be a protest party on the fringes of British politics, or do we want to be a serious party of government, looking ready to take back power from the Conservatives and transform people's lives once more in Britain? That's what Labour's always tried to be in the past. We seem to be abdicating that responsibility in the last year, and I'm determined that we will get united and make sure we get back to being a party of power once more.
Now, it looks more likely, of course, that it will be Jeremy Corbyn's job to reunite the party. And he's got to start that here with his MPs. And that's his biggest challenge. He's got to reunite a parliamentary party, most of which have expressed their discontent with his leadership. They say he isn't up to it. He's got to find a way to bring them back on board and start taking the fight to the opposition.
Carl Dinnan, many thanks. An American academic has sparked controversy among cat owners by suggesting the animals should be kept indoors or on a lead to protect wildlife. Dr. Peter Mara goes even further to recommend that all stray cats should be put down unless they can be found a home. Well, Rupert Evelyn is at an animal sanctuary in Bristol. Rupert, why on earth has he reached this conclusion?
Well, it's controversial, isn't it? And it's not going to exactly please an awful lot of cat owners. But he argues it is based on scientific research that suggests that the damage that cats do to the biodiversity is so critical, such an enormous amount of other animals are killed by cats, that this is why he's putting forward this argument. There are, of course, those who completely dispute that. The RSPB is one of those. They, for example, argue that, yes, cats do damage, but you don't need to go anywhere near as far as what Dr. Peter Mara is suggesting. Let me introduce you to Sarah Schranz. Sarah, you deal and take in cats all the time here at the Holyhead Sanctuary. What do you reckon?
Okay, so obviously I was quite outraged by the article this morning, and when I saw it, it's something that we also want to see the wildlife protected around our area. We're in woodland and countryside, and we don't want to see injured wildlife. However, the responsibility comes straight back to the owners in the first place. Cats should be neutered and spayed. They can be spayed between 4 to 6 months of age, and then this is going to stop the unwanted kittens and cats going out into the countryside and hunting. You'll generally find it's not the domestic pets that are actually out hunting for food. It's generally feral cats and kittens who owners might not even be aware even exist, that are hunting the wildlife to survive. They can't be blamed for this.
You speak to cat owners all the time. The very suggestion of putting down cats is just going to rile.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. I mean, for a start, there are lots of centres like our own that take in feral cats and stray cats, and again, owners can be responsible by feeding them at home. There are other things that people can do, like putting in systems in their gardens to stop cats from getting out, but that allows them outside. All
right, Sarah, thank you very much. I think what's being asked for, in one sense, is a change of behaviour. One of the suggestions is that cats should be put on leads when they're taken outside. It hasn't taken off here. It does happen a little bit more in America. Who knows? Let's wait and see.
Indeed, Rupert, thank you. Well, let us know what you think. Should cats be kept on a lead or indoors? Have your say at itv.com/news. And finally, after Britain's Paralympics team made a triumphant return to the UK yesterday, some athletes will be wondering what to do next. But that doesn't appear to be a problem for the sprinter, Johnny Peacock.
It's coming right away. A brilliant run from Peacock. 10.81. He annihilated the field.
Fresh from defending his gold in the T44 100-metre title in Rio, he's now become a model for a fashion label. Well, I spoke to him from our central London studio a short while ago, and he told me how it felt to have achieved so much at just 23 years old.
I don't really know. I don't really look at it like that. I've looked at the two things that I really wanted to achieve, which were, obviously London 2012 and now Rio 2016, and I've done those, and I've been blessed with great opportunities and great things to do, but, I'll just take it whilst it comes, because I'm sure in a few years I don't get these opportunities anymore.
As you say, you've got Tokyo coming up, I know, which I think you're probably going to be looking at taking part in.
Definitely. I think, obviously my main kind of goal right now will be London 2017 next year. We've got the World Championships there, back in the stadium where it all began. So, for me, that's almost going to be just as big as Rio, if not on a personal level, even bigger, just because, getting back into the stadium where it all began in front of that crowd would be great. And then definitely Tokyo will be firmly in the sights after that.
Yeah, and you lost your leg when you were just 5 years old, when you had meningitis. And for any family, any parents, they'll know that must be an absolutely devastating time for your family. How has that been for your family? What is the mindset, in a sense, that has got you from that point to this?
Definitely, I think for all my family, it was a tricky period in time, especially my mum and my dad. It can't have been much fun, I guess. But I think that that's happened now. I think that they're just happy that I'm here and happy that I'm enjoying life. I think that it's awesome to see from them, to see what we're doing now, and I get to go to these cool places. So there are bad things, but there are good things, and I think in life that you don't let hard things get you down, I guess, and just keep going for it.
And with the modelling, it must have been fun, but you must be aware yourself that you are now an absolute inspiration. What kind of message does it send out when people see you modelling and doing these sorts of interviews?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It was definitely weird to get that opportunity for sure, but it was really cool. So definitely different to a normal training day. So I'll take it. And this is all great fun. These are opportunities you don't normally get given. And on behalf of the sport, that's personally what I want. I want to see the Paralympic sport growing. And I feel like it is doing that. The sport itself has moved on so much in 4 years. And that's what I want to keep seeing. I think Tokyo will be an amazing time, and to get given that opportunity alongside all this is just amazing. It could have been different. I could have been sat at home crying over what could have been, but we're not. We're here talking about how great it's gone. So I'll take that.
Well, Johnny, you are an absolute ambassador for the sport. Congratulations. Nice talking to you.
That's great. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for your time.
Lovely young lad. Right, that's it for lunchtime. ITV Evening News is back at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather, but from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, good afternoon.